one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Is there any public comment from the board? Okay, I have a couple of announcements. The town clerk's office will be closed Thursday, June 16th, but open on Friday, June 17th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. As is our custom, I'd also like to cover some vacancies we have. We're going to make some appointments tonight to the various boards and committees, but even having done that, we will end up with. Okay, which one?
It's not vacant.
Not vacant. Okay, good. Online editing. We have 3 positions on the Finance Committee, 1 position on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 position on the Sewer Commission, which is an elected position, fence viewer positions, I guess, Public Access Cable Committee 2, Cable Advisory Committee 1, Stormwater Task Force 1, Personnel Committee 1, and 1 on the Conservation Commission as of July 1st, 2016. So again, I'd like to encourage people to be to give some thought to serving the town on various committees, and certainly if you're interested in exploring any of that, you can contact any of us, but you can also fill out a talent bank form, which is available on the town's website and in the office here at Town Hall. Is there any public comment from the public?
Hi, I'm Mark Bursch. I'm the chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners. I wanted to come before the board and the town tonight to give you a little bit of information on where we are at the water district.
Great, welcome.
In lieu of our recent town meeting and so forth. We did have a meeting after the town meeting on May 11th to just review. We went over our warrants. We accepted minutes of a previous meeting. We did, the superintendent informed the board of a memorandum of understanding with the town of Lancaster is being signed by Lancaster and will be forwarded to us. Since then, we have signed it. It is the whole thing is in its infancy. It does not tie us to any agreements at this time, but we are willing to talk with them about selling water to the town of Lancaster. The clerk treasurer has requested the ability to remain in her position for another year. The board agreed with the request. She had notified applicants that we had interviewed for that position that we will be filling that in the next season. We also discussed financing for the new garage. We are looking at different options, but the consensus is a 30-year note. Our interest rate for building the new garage on the note would be somewhere between 2.185 and 3.125 through the USDA loan program. A motion was made and that was voted to move forward to apply for the loan. We signed a letter with our auditor for the district for the upcoming audit of 2015-16. We have all of our books audited by an independent party to make sure that all of our money works out. We talked about adding our next meeting, adding communications with the public added to the next agenda, and that meeting was adjourned. On May 25th, we met. We had a request for an abatement. That was denied. We had discussions about how to be more transparent, how to get our information out more. We talked about inserts into our invoices, public access, and what I'm doing here tonight. We discussed whether we would need to have a meeting if we entered into a intermunicipal agreement with Lancaster. Through our counsel and through advice from the Attorney General's office, we're not required to, but we have not made a decision on whether or not to have a meeting of the district to vote on on that issue at this time. Water restrictions are now in effect. They are a requirement of DEP to have the water restrictions. They're a conservation issue. And they are either by date or by stream flow. We do ours by stream flow. It's posted downstairs as well as it was in the paper. It's no non-essential use of water during the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Those are the times when most evaporation happens and you lose most of the water that you're using. Water can still be used during these times for watering vegetable gardens, farming use, and business purposes. Our water withdrawal permit requires us to implement the water restrictions when stream flows drop below a certain level for more than 3 consecutive days. The purpose of the restriction is to limit the use of water during the highest evaporation time of the day for non-essential uses. Additional restrictions may be implemented in the future if we get into worse conditions than we are now. Right now, it doesn't affect what we can pump. It's just mandated by DEP. We have a meeting upcoming tomorrow night. Our agenda is posted downstairs as well. We're going to go over warrants, minutes. We are going to discuss modifying our water rates and miscellaneous charges in order to fund our building of the garage. We're going to discuss meter operation noise issue at the Stone Farm development. There was a hydrant struck and destroyed on Rennie Street at Pratt. That's up for discussion or an update. An update on the new garage office project on Massachusetts Ave. For those that don't know, where the flour barn or across from the old Sozik garage, in that area, you can see where we're clearing. That's the locale of our new garage that we're looking to build up. And then we have Commissioner Superintendent's additions, and we have a public comment at the end of our meeting. For the next 3 months, our schedule of meetings will be, we have tomorrow night, July 13th, August 10th, only once a month during our summer schedule, and in September we start up and have one on the 14th and the 28th. That's all I have. So,
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
and I'm hoping to be back here again if anything comes up a few times a year, just to get our information out there a little bit more.
I truly appreciate it, thank you.
Yes.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
We do appreciate the increased communication, and if there's anything we can do to reciprocate or to help communicate with your board, we'd be happy to, or I would be happy to.
If anybody has questions, come to our meetings or call me.
Great.
Stop me on the street.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment from the public? Chief Marino.
Jim Marino, the police chief. Just want to remind the public that the animal control comes under the auspices of the police department, and we've made several efforts to try to get residents to call the police department and not the animal control officer's house. We've advertised on social media in the Ledger and hopefully soon in the Sentinel to try to get that word out there. It's also on the animal control website, so if they go to lunenburgmass.gov and click on animal control, it'll bring them directly to the animal control website. There's a lot of information on there, including the correct number to call, and that's the general line for the police department unless it's an emergency. Again, 911 if it's an emergency, and we'll respond to it. If they do call dispatch, it helps us to facilitate the documentation of all the calls, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. So again, I encourage all the residents to do so, to call the police department, not the animal control officer's home anymore. And I know some of them are old friends of hers, and they want to call her directly, but I'd appreciate it if they'd first call dispatch to report any animal control issues. Secondly, I just want to remind everybody, again, on the website, on the animal control website, we've posted the policy, animal control policy, and they will find in there that we cannot relocate wild animals. We're not allowed to by law unless they pose a public safety hazard. An example of that, this morning we had a call, there was some skunks in somebody's basement, and unfortunately, they have to call an exterminator at that point to have those removed. They were baby skunks. and we cannot relocate those unless, again, if it poses a threat to public safety, which in this case, I guess it didn't, then we can't respond to those calls. Well, we'll respond to them, but there may not be anything we can do about it, and I don't want them to think that we don't care about it. It's just that there's some things we can't do. So, policies online, please call the police department for all animal control calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. We do have an official hearing at 7:15, but given that we have 5 minutes before that time, I'll take something else up. Do we want to go down to the item?
Item 3.
Item 3, a request to adopt the Massachusetts Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
At a meeting a couple of weeks ago, I advised you that MRPC had completed the update to the Regional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, the 2015 update, and it had been approved. At that time, you had requested that the report be made available to you so that you could review it. We did make that available to you electronically, and this evening we're looking for the board to hopefully to adopt the plan. This is a plan that identifies natural hazards in all of the communities that are members of the MRPC region. There aren't any surprises in this plan. Again, it's an update to an existing plan. Having an adopted plan is important because it allows us to apply for grants that we wouldn't otherwise be eligible for. The fire chief, Chief Sullivan, is here this evening, and if you have questions, hopefully either one of us will be able to answer those for you.
Any questions on the plan?
I'll just make a comment that I appreciate that the various comments that this board has had were incorporated into that comment, and the fact that it was updated is a good thing to keep on our agenda for various times. I think there's a statutory requirement for a certain time frame, but I'm glad we're able to keep this up to date for ourselves.
The update, is that an annual update or just as required?
It's not annual. I want to say maybe 3 years. Oh, 5?
Okay.
Boy, time goes by fast.
Started on this in
Yeah.
2013.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to adopt it?
I would move that we adopt the Massachusetts Regional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan for 2015 as updated.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All set. All right. It being 7:15, did you read this?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to open the hearing for B&H Corporation doing business as Mickey Shays pursuant to General Law, Section 138, Section 23 for alcohol license 0636000039, located at 324 Electric Avenue, regarding a May 5th, 2016 violation of Lunenburg license regulations, Sections 1.04A and Section 1.04C. And I'd like to note that this is an official hearing and that everybody testifying must be sworn in. So, you gotta find the swearing in form. What did I do with it? Hold on.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members. Brian Riley from Copeland and Page Town Council is here to try to assist with this hearing. If you'd like, I can swear in the witnesses.
I'd appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. Sergeant, Mr. Herrick, do you swear under pains and penalties of perjury that the testimony you'll give before the Board of Selectmen this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Unless you have any questions, we'll just start right in and call Sergeant Hebert up.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening.
Could you state your name and occupation for the record, please?
Jack Hebert, the Midnight Sergeant for the Police Department. My last name is Hebert.
And how long have you served with the Lunenburg Police?
Be 10 years in August.
Okay. And did you submit a report regarding an incident on April 17th concerning Mickey Shays?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I believe the board has that, but I would ask the sergeant to read that into the record since it's not terribly long.
I was just reading from my report. It says, on 4/17/16 at approximately 02:10, I, Sergeant Jack Hebert, observed 8 vehicles remaining in the parking lot of Mickey Shays. I pulled into the parking lot, observed 2 males standing at the right side of the bar. I pulled around to the back of the building and exited my cruiser. Upon pulling on the rear door, I found it to be locked. I knocked on the door and observed both males looking at me through the window. A male employee of Mickey Shays, known to me as David Vargo, then came to the door and advised the door was locked. I advised him to unlock it, and he stated it was padlocked. I advised him to go get the key as I walked to the door, or walked around towards the front door. Upon walking to the side door, I observed the 2 males, later identified as Michael DeSalner and Mike Nettleblatt, still standing at the side of the bar. I could hear Vargo tell the bar manager, known to me as Lindsay Achilla, that I was at the rear door. I then heard Achilla state, "Oh," expletive beginning with an F, "you go out the front door," as she was observed through the side door to start pushing DeSalner towards the front of the bar, away from the door that I was at and away from where this vehicle was later determined to be, as his vehicle was parked in the rear lot. I could hear Achilla stating, "Get out, get out." I noted that prior to my knock on the door, the bar was quiet. No one was heard telling the 2 males to get out. There was no pushing towards the exit, nor did we receive any calls requesting assistance with the removal of these 2 patrons. I approached the front door and was able to open it without assistance as it was still unlocked. DeSalner and Nettleblatt had not yet exited the front door and were both still inside the bar with Achilla. Vargo was observed cleaning the bar, and the bartender, Rhonda Eaton, was observed cleaning the bar. I was not able to see any alcoholic beverages in plain view anywhere. I noted that there was no doorman and no one wearing anything that would identify them as staff. Achilla immediately began to cry and plead with me not to file a report and stated that it was only 2 friends. I advised her that a report would be filed, and I then had a conversation with Achilla about the previous 8 or so documented and other undocumented incidents in the past 3 years regarding this reoccurrence issue of patrons in the bar after closing and other after-hours alcohol-related issues involving Achilla. I spoke with her about numerous suggestions that were made in an attempt to combat this issue and steps her father and bar owner Robert Herrick told the Board of Selectmen he was taking to solve this issue. Nettleblatt and DeSalner were both observed to smell of alcoholic beverages with bloodshot glassy eyes and were stumbling around. Trying to talk to either was pointless as they could not hold a conversation and kept stating the same things and asking the same questions. They were advised to leave the property and were subsequently transported home by Achilla.
Thank you. You said you observed that the 2 non-employees, Mr. DeSalnier and Mr. Nettleblatt, there was a car in the back lot?
There's a pickup truck in the back lot, yep.
Okay, so as far as you know, the 2 of them were in this one vehicle?
I believe they each had their own vehicle there,
Okay.
but the one that was observed being pushed to the front, his vehicle was definitely at the back lot.
Okay. And you didn't observe either of them with an alcoholic beverage or alcoholic beverages on the bar at that
No, I
point?
did not.
Okay. Mr. Herrick, do you have any questions of the sergeant?
I don't have, no, I don't have any. Well, actually, I do.
Mr. Herrick, could I ask you to come to the microphone?
I'm curious about the second vehicle that had occupants, and it's not mentioned in here, and didn't know if you wanted to mention that or expound on that.
That would be the bartender. I believe she said she had 3 people waiting out front in her vehicle that she was transporting home, and that would account for the 8 vehicles that were remaining in the lot.
So there were other people waiting outside, that's all I wanted to say. Okay.
Members of the board have any questions, Sergeant?
Any questions for the sergeant? No.
Okay. I think the report speaks for itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Mr. Herrick, if you wanted to make
Sure.
any statements, this would be
Yeah, I
time.
actually don't really have a statement to make because I wasn't there. I believe my daughter submitted a statement because she wasn't able to be here. I am here if you have any questions regarding policies, procedures, things we do when we close, and more than happy to explain that. So if anyone has any questions.
So what is the policy if somebody is,
Okay, when,
I didn't even finish the question. Let me finish.
I know, okay.
What is the policy when somebody, as Ms. Aquila is alleging, that she was trying to keep them from driving home?
Right.
What
We
is your
have-
policy with,
Okay, policy is, generally what happens is during the course of the night, if you come across someone, if someone would come in or if someone appeared to be having effects of alcohol, during the course of the night when time permits, you would offer either food or a carbonated beverage or something like that. In this situation, they came in after we had closed. And I know that because we padlock the back doors. I've been broken into on several occasions. So we don't even padlock those doors till people are out of the building. And the only people in there at the time would have been my bartender, my kitchen help, and my manager. What ended up happening is they came from back to the front, and because the door hadn't been locked, they were able to get in. They wanted to get their keys back. My daughter had their keys so that they wouldn't drive. And in that situation late at night, one of the things we would try to do is to keep an alcoholic-involved situation from becoming an alcohol-involved problem. And there are a number of solutions we could have. If they had a friend that could drive, we would offer that. If they had a cab, if it was able to take a cab, we would offer that. Because they were high school friends of my daughter, she offered to drive them. And she was going to take them to her house, coffee, something to eat, whatever. I think most people, everybody understands that the only cure for someone who's had a little too much is time. It takes time for the body to process that, and that's all she was designed, that offering that ride was all that was designed to do. They came back into the building because it had taken a little bit of time to get the bartender to close, and it was her first evening working. She's normally a day bartender, and she works Saturday night, and she opens on Sunday morning, which is why the people that were in the parking lot were waiting for her. She has about a 45-minute commute, but she stays in town on Saturday night so that she can be there Sunday morning. What didn't happen, and should have happened, was that front door would have been locked. They wouldn't have been able to get in. And the reason that they were standing next to my daughter was they were trying to get their keys back. She wouldn't give them to them. And again, the padlock on the back indicates to me through the policies and procedures that we have that nobody would have been in the building that was a patron or a customer when that door was padlocked. So, I mean, I don't have much more to offer.
if I may ask of Officer Hebert, as a licensing authority for the Board of Selectmen for the alcoholic licenses, what is the proper procedure in that position?
I believe all the doors are supposed to be locked at closing time at 2 o'clock. So I shouldn't have been able to open that front door at 2:10.
Okay. And what about patrons, excuse me, one more question. And what about patrons in a bar who shouldn't be driving?
First of all,
What is the establishment's, what is the proper procedure?
I don't know what their procedure would be. They're not supposed to be over-serving patrons. They're not supposed to be serving anybody that appears to be under the influence of alcoholic beverages. If somebody gets off the bar and stumbles to the bathroom and then comes back, that's something that they should take note of, and that person shouldn't be served anymore. Whether they were served at that establishment or if they showed up at that establishment, stumbled in, and they want to just not serve them at all. I've made suggestions to Mr. Herrick and Mr. Chilla numerous times that if that situation occurs, to call us and we will assist them. Because like I said, this seems to be a reoccurring issue with them. And the way I've explained it to them before is I rather get a call there at 10 of and help them deal with the situation and get that person safely home, whether it is in a cab or otherwise, rather than going there at 10 after and finding ourselves and being here again, listening to excuses. I would think as a bar owner, you wouldn't want to be transporting those people home and taking that responsibility of leaving them at their residence intoxicated when they just came from your bar, but that's not for me to make that policy.
So you've offered that suggestion?
Numerous times. Every time that we've been in front of the board here, I have talked to Mr. Herrick or Mr. Chilla or both downstairs in the lobby or out in the parking lot every single time.
And
Excuse me, one last
sure.
thing. Mr. Herrick, is that accurate? Have you?
I'm sorry. is what accurate.
Sergeant Hebert has said that he has suggested to you that in cases like this, with patrons who, people in your establishment determined should not be driving, that you should be calling the police to assist.
It's an option, and I mean, it's not normally the first option. You know, when you, I mean, the ABC is a little bit sketchy with this, the TIPS program is a little bit sketchy with this, but generally you try to get a friend to take them, call a cab, offer a ride. Usually calling dispatch and getting a cruiser would be the last thing you do. In fact, I called dispatch last night. One of the doors that I had swung open with the wind, and I wasn't able to lock it. So that procedure, and that was around 11:30, quarter of 12 when I was closing. I called dispatch, they sent a cruiser. I asked them to keep an extra eye on the door because I had to jimmy rig it to keep it locked. It was fixed this morning. But these things happen. Normally, I don't try to call dispatch and get a cruiser unless it's a situation that I can't handle, you know, with the set of guidelines that I get from you and from the ABCC.
So you would acknowledge that it is an option, and it's an option. It's an option that your staff chose not to follow.
It's calling the police, sure. Calling the station is an option.
Okay.
It's one of several.
Okay. Thank you.
Just following up on Mr. Alonso's comment to Sergeant Hebert, my understanding that the violation is not the over-serving, but the allowing patrons to be on premises after mandatory closing, and failure to have patrons leave in a quiet and orderly manner.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I just make one more comment, Tom? You know, certainly calling a dispatch and getting a cruiser is an option, but these were people that she went to high school, lifelong friends. They weren't belligerent. They weren't demanding their keys back. They wanted them back. They weren't demanding. It wasn't a situation that even remotely was out of control. They just happened to get back in the building because the door wasn't locked yet. The personnel I had should have been out of there well before 2.
I guess I'd be curious to know how she got the keys in the first place, given the story that I've heard so far. But with Ms. Achilla not here and not sworn in, I'm not sure that I should be dealing with the letter she sent to the board.
Well, the letter is certainly admissible.
You can consider it. I mean, you're right, it's not sworn as the other two people here, but you can.
I guess I'd like to follow up, though, and say how, you know, I'd like to know the circumstances on, you know, when they arrived, how did she end up with their keys? Would Mr. Herrick know the answer to that question?
Well, I know he wasn't there. Just asking how Mr. Chilla ended up with their keys in the first place.
When they came in, we hadn't closed quite yet. She recognized the same thing that Officer Hebert recognized, that they shouldn't be behind the wheel. She talked them into giving them her keys. They gave her her keys, and she was going to take them to her house and then either home or back, depending on how long they stayed there. But she was able to talk them out of driving. She got their keys.
Mr. Hebert, or Sergeant Hebert, sorry. You are often on the night shift, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And approximately how many establishments of this type are around in Lunenburg?
I believe we have 22 total on and off combined. I think we have 13 on-premises licenses.
13. And of those places that have them, how often would you say you visit those after hours?
I can tell you on this night, I was at Graffiti at 2:02, I believe it was. They had 13 people. They were issued a warning from our lieutenant, as I believe we changed that policy that we're now allowed to handle that in-house before it gets to you for a first offense. Routinely, every night, I go around at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, depending on the night. Sometimes it's 1 o'clock, sometimes it's 2 o'clock, and check the bars just to make sure.
So it's a standard practice?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
if unless the board has any other questions for them, which of course you can ask them at any time. I think just as a summary, I think the report speaks for itself. It hasn't been contradicted either by Mr. Herrick or Ms. Achilla, her letter there. And as the board may recall, you held a hearing last April 2015, found two separate violations of this establishment. One was serving a minor, and one was a similar patrons on the premises after closing hour. And you issued a 5-day suspension. So this one is within the 2 years. Under your regulations, you're allowed to consider that, as a third offense, and do with that what you will. Obviously, you have the flexibility to, make a decision of what, if anything, you want to do as far as a disciplinary action.
I have one more question for Mr. Herrick. According to Lindsay's letter, she stated that she's no longer the manager.
That's correct.
What is your process to replace the manager?
Okay, I spoke with the ABC actually on 2 separate occasions regarding change of manager, and they told me that as the owner, I would be acting as the manager of record until such time as paperwork was processed, which is currently at the attorney, and that my acting as the manager until someone is appointed and approved is the way that's handled.
Is Ms. Chilla no longer the manager or no longer even employed?
I'm sorry, Tom.
Is she no longer manager or no longer even employed?
No longer an employee. After 24 years.
I was going to mention that before we wrap up. Obviously, the manager of record needs to be approved by this board and the ABCC, but on the other hand, you can't replace someone overnight, and so it sounds like Mr. Herrick is already in the process of getting that application prepared.
Is there a time?
There really isn't, and I think, I'm sure what the ABCC said is what they tell people. You can't sit back for 6 months and obviously not let the board know what's going on, but at the same time, it does take a little while, so...
So there's no time, there is a time limit, but they don't tell you what it is.
Yeah, something like that, yes. I don't think there's any, unless you have more questions, I don't think there's any more testimony to hear, so when you're ready, you can close that part of the hearing and then decide whether you want to find a violation. If you do, what you want to do about it.
Is there any further questions, or should we close the hearing, close that part of the hearing? Okay. So I guess our first decision is to determine if a violation occurred.
It would be hard to determine that there wasn't a violation. I think that part is pretty clear.
Would agree.
I would agree. I would make a motion, I think we make motions at this point, to note that a violation has occurred.
A second.
Okay. I don't believe there's any further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we're talking about possible penalties. Is there any discussion on that?
Well, I mean, I'll be very honest, this is a repeat problem. And for the statute and our own regulations, we're only allowed to determine the last year. And even in that last year, there were 2 other violations. One for this very issue, and then one serving a minor, which is even more severe than this one. There are policies and there are procedures that could have been followed instead of the officer finding out, especially with a prior history. They could have called the police and said, listen, before we know you come by, we have this issue, can you please help us with this? To me, the fact that they were friends or not friends is immaterial. It just shows bad judgment, again. And since it's 3 violations in 2 years, I would offer the same exact penalty as before. I would say another 5-day suspension. We don't have, I asked the question, about the other establishments. We've had a couple of license hearings in my 12-year tenure here, but I mean, there were one and that was done. People really understood this is not something they want to be involved in, and for whatever reasons given, I mean, this establishment doesn't seem to get that message. So I think it should be our goal to make sure the message is clear.
I think that's a reasonable recommendation. Certainly, we could even go longer than that, but I'm fine with a 5-day period.
So I would make a motion that we recommend a 5-day suspension of the license of Mickey Shays due to this violation.
On a date to start serving.
I don't think, does the motion have to have the date, or can we determine that after the
Well,
motion?
I would recommend that you include dates.
Okay.
And I think we went through this before, strictly speaking, the statute doesn't say if there's an appeal to the ABCC, it puts the suspension on hold.
Sure.
But sort of as a practical matter, it makes more sense to give let the licensee holder, have their day in court, so to speak. But if no appeal is filed, that way you've already got the dates on.
How long does the establishment have to appeal?
I would work with Carrie to get a written decision out, hopefully tomorrow, and you only have 5 business days from receipt of the notice to appeal it.
Okay, so I would say
it's a
that
week.
I would recommend a 5-day suspension from June 27th through July 1st.
Second?
Are you, well, I want to make sure, are you closed any days of the week? Are you open every day of the week?
7 days, yes.
Okay, so those are what would be my recommendation.
We have a motion that's seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we'll prepare the paperwork, get that to Mr. Herrick in due course, and it'll be effective the 27th of June. Okay. Thank you, Sergeant Hebert.
Thank you.
All righty. Our first item of current business is the town manager review. As the chair of the board, I am responsible to collect and develop a composite evaluation based on input from all the members of the board. I have done that and circulated it with the board. I've had a discussion with the town manager, and unless there's any objection, I'm prepared to read into the record the overall evaluation. Okay, our evaluation at current is broken down into 5 areas. The first being relationships with the board, and out of a possible score of 50, the composite score was 45, resulting in an outstanding rating. The second item is fiscal management. Out of a possible score of 40, the combined number was 38, which is also outstanding. The third item is community and public relations, and out of a possible 40, the combined score was 36, which is outstanding. The fourth item is personnel administration, and out of a possible 45, the combined score was 36, which is commendable. And finally, the fifth category is professional skill and abilities, and out of a possible score of 50, the composite score was 43, which is outstanding. The weighted average on that is 197 for an overall rating against our grid of 197 against a range of 181 to 225 for an overall outstanding rating. I'd like to read into the record a kind of a compilation of the narration. All members agreed that the communication from the town manager is timely and helpful in their decision-making on issues being faced by the board. All members felt that they were being treated fairly and equally, which is vital to a well-functioning board. One member noted an instance of communication disconnect on the pavement management plan, but this was not mentioned by other members. We should continuously improve the feedback loop and suggest improvements, and to maintain smooth communications between the board and town manager with regard to personnel and operational policy. Under fiscal management, as with prior years, the town manager remains an excellent steward for the town's finances. This is clearly her greatest strength. Budgetary and financial reports are prepared on time, presented with clarity, and made available to the public in various manners and media. Sound financial policies and practices continue to be added or refined when needed and followed during the fiscal year. Our current S&P Standard & Poor's bond rating reflects that excellence. Of particular note were Kerry's efforts with regard to pavement management and turf field financial solutions. She has continued to effectively work with the board and with Labor Council in reaching mutually beneficial union contract agreements. In the third area of community and public administration, as the outwardly facing representative of the town manager conducts herself professionally and fairly to all with whom she deals. She is calm and attentive, but always positive and helpful. One has to look no further than town meeting to indicate how clear, concise, and available her information is. There are few questions and even fewer challenges or misunderstandings. The board and the public have grown to trust her research, her analysis, and her presentation. When questions are asked, they are answered thoughtfully, respectfully, and substantially. Sometimes frustration occurs when those questions cannot be answered immediately, as further research may be needed or input from other sources may be required. In the area of personnel administration, the scores in this category are lower only because the other categories were scored outstanding, and this category received a commendable score. This may be due to lack of an agreement as to the relationship between town employees, their performance, real or perceived, and the expectations of the board. The goal-setting workshop process should create an agreed understanding of roles and performance metrics between the town manager, town employees, and the Board of Selectmen. And finally, professional skills and abilities. The town manager maintains the highest standards of ethics and honesty and demands that of those who work under her charge. Her planning and execution skills are outstanding and only limited by the time and available resources. She takes responsibility for those who work under her charge. She is encouraged by the board to maintain active membership in her professional associations, as they are a good source of information and contacts that can benefit the town. There are items in the review that talk to what the town manager has done well, what the town manager could do better, what the board can do to help the town manager, what the town manager can do to help the board, and suggestions for the town manager's future goals. It's my intention that we take them up in detail at our workshop to be scheduled when the full board is back, and I will report on that as we have those discussions. Overall, I'd just like to say that, in my opinion, the town manager, Ms. LaFleur, has done an outstanding job, and it's a pleasure to work with her.
You're here.
Any other comments or input?
Well, I would say more, but this is the time when it seems like we go out of our way to embarrass the town manager with praise, and she loves that. So move on, she would say.
So we've done enough of that.
But anyway, I obviously, I mean, I think that her position here and the work she's done over her whole tenure has been invaluable for us to get to be in the position we are. I mean, with the bond rating that we have, to get the projects done we have, to have a projection about how to maintain where we have gotten, and to, you know, really urge people forward, both on committees and boards as well as employees, to, you know, maintain the gains we've gotten. So, I mean, it's hard to overestimate, but I'm sure she wants me to stop now, so I will.
Yeah, I would echo that with the added comment that I've made several times, is that we as the board need to continue to stay out of the way of the town manager so that the town manager can do her job. And I think this board is doing a pretty good job of that. As somebody stated, heads in, hands off.
Great. Do you have anything you want to add, or do you want to move on to the next topic? Okay, fine. Thanks again.
Can we come up with a terrible review? I want to see her reaction to a terrible review next year.
I don't want to see that. Our next business item is continuation of the discussion we had last week on the power purchase agreement discussion, and we were going to do a little bit of research and follow-up, and I wanted to return to that topic.
Great. I contacted several people who I believe commented during our discussion at the special town meeting the last time we did it. A combination of understanding that this is different than solar on the ground to solar is solar is solar. That supporting the expansion of solar where appropriate. Some questions about the lease versus purchase, use of contingency funds from the school to do it, concerns about aesthetics of what the buildings were actually going to look like. One comment was they thought that all projects were going to come back to town meeting, whether pre or post approval by the Board of Selectmen. The bottom line that I got from the various comments that I talked with people was that there should be a public forum separate from the Board of Selectmen up to and including a special town meeting for discussion. So that sort of echoes with what Elaine had gathered from the actual comments that both Mr. Alonso and I made during the point. And there were other comments about specific project discussions that they wanted to have a conversation on.
My feeling is that from reviewing what was said at that meeting and what the intent was, it was clear that seemingly a majority of the board said that it would come back. I have heard from 2 residents who supported that they wanted it to come back. And I don't think it's an overbearing obstacle to have a town meeting for an article, or if we had another one, to have it. I mean, I think what we say at those meetings means something, and I think there's a lot to be said about what Mr. Ebersol said about the aesthetics. I think people want to know what it's going to look like before they do it. It's a brand new building, and God forbid it looks horrible, even in the illustrations or the mock-up. I mean, people want to know. I doubt it, but I don't feel like we should do that. I think we could bring this all, and we could do it in a timely manner that doesn't jeopardize the project. Mm-hmm. So I would be for a special town meeting and a meeting where we come forward with more of the details that we need.
I guess just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I think that I feel confident that the discussion at town meeting was that the town felt comfortable with us making decisions that were longer than 3 years. But we felt the need to be transparent and to bring things to the town. And I think that was very noble, and we should, stand by that. But to the extent that that costs anything, if we're going to have a town meeting anyway, fine. To the extent that we have to have a town meeting just for this purpose, I think we should weigh whether having the town ratify the decision and input as to the aesthetics at some point after we begin, we meet our objectives is probably a reasonable way to approach our commitment. And the one concern I have, frankly, is just if we try to do this in the summertime and try it in time to meet the deadlines of our ability to take advantage of this, are we going to get a quorum? And if we don't, have we invested that money and still don't have what we intended?
So a few points to those, since you're playing devil's advocate. Number one, if this was a Nexamp and it didn't even exist in town, it just existed in the Unitil area, and it was just a matter of us purchasing it to save money, I probably would say there was no need for it. for it to be here, because it doesn't even involve Lunenburg property. It just would be a cost saver that people have seen the benefits of, because we've had some for over a year or two on our budget. So that's number one. Number two is, if what you said, if we call a special town meeting and there is no quorum, we always have the ability to say, you know what, we wanted the town to be involved, but now we have to make a decision because it's going to involve the savings that Mr. Londa has said, and we've offered it to the town. If people don't come and they don't participate, that's different than not even giving them the option, to me. So I have no problem with acting at that point. I just would rather, because we have said that we would, or some of us said that we would, I would rather give them the opportunity.
So could I just mention, because aesthetics have come up twice, the forum for discussing aesthetics is not going to be at town meeting. Town meeting would take up the power purchase agreement, but not the issue of aesthetics is going to be talked about at the school committee level and then the planning board level, but it's not going to be part of the power purchase agreement. So I just want to be clear that if people are concerned about that, they need to be paying attention and involving themselves in the approval process before town meeting.
In that case, I would not be voting for a power purchase agreement unless I agreed with the aesthetics.
Right, I was going to say, so we may not discuss it, but you could certainly, as a voter at town meeting, people can use whatever criteria
But I'm actually
they
talking
want.
about as a Board of Selectmen member, that I think it's our responsibility not just to do that, but this is looking at something that this is a town building, even though it's owned by the school, that I am looking at. I believe that aesthetics is probably one of the most important parts of the approval process, because one of the things that happened on Pleasant Street and Chase Road is we can talk about aesthetics, about solar being on the outside. If we have solar panels that are sticking up, and I don't expect they're going to be on the flat roof, okay, what's that going to happen? What's that going to look like? And I believe that that is part and parcel of the process, and to expect people to have to go to the school committee and to the planning board and not be able to weigh in on whether they want to support the project or not, I think that's expecting too much in this case.
So I guess what I'm suggesting is the power purchase agreement is not going to speak to that topic. So people can vote in favor or against for any number of reasons, but there isn't going to be specific language in that agreement to that. So if that's of concern, that it could be brought up, but it wouldn't be addressed within the agreement.
Right. You're not going to influence the design of it at town meeting. I agree. Okay, fair enough.
So I think the other thing is then we need to consider the legal authorization that you have, and if it's the board's intent that all of these power purchase agreements or some power purchase agreements go back to town meeting to be voted, I think we should be planning on clearing that up as well, because we don't want to have on the record that we have town meeting approving something that the board has the authority to approve, and I just would prefer that we clear that up as well.
And I would agree with that.
And how do you suggest we do that, at a town meeting? Is that what, when you say clear it up?
No, I think we would, if we're going to have a town meeting, we would also have, one of the warrant articles would be to rescind the prior authorization, and then you could propose another warrant article to give you authorization for certain types of projects, to negotiate power purchase agreement with certain types of projects, and handle it that way. And then...
Or we could have a policy, couldn't we? That's not a town meeting.
Well,
Again, because if we do this, for instance, if we do what the chairman is saying, and we don't get a quorum, I don't have any problem making the decision. I don't want it to be a de facto decision because we couldn't get a quorum. If the vote goes up or down, fine, I'm not going to overturn it. But if they don't make a decision because they don't get a quorum, I don't mind having the authority to make the decision.
So in that case, you would not want to rescind the authorization, but you do currently, according to town council, have the authorization to approve power purchase agreements for any type of roof-mounted, ground-mounted, the facility actually residing within Unitil service territories.
I guess I wouldn't have any problem presenting the town with a policy of when we're going to do it. These are the ones we're going to come back to you for, and for these reasons, and just have that. But I don't think it needs a town meeting vote. We could just have it as a Board of Selectmen policy.
Right. It would basically be the same thing, excuse me, we said we would do, we'd bring it back. We can say, we will bring it back if it's not in accordance with our policy.
Okay.
So is there an action now?
I would move that we have a special town meeting in order to bring the power purchase agreement to it.
Second.
Okay.
So,
In the area of discussion, my question is there anything else that, I know we've talked about having a fall special town meeting. Can we get this done in time and still deal with whatever other issues there are, or are we now talking about 2 special town meetings?
well, this item is, would need to happen before when we would have a special town meeting in the fall, because that
Okay.
would be Halloween to Thanksgiving timetable. This is something that would need to happen over the summer. I did check to see if we had something this summer. Did anybody else have anything? The planning board does have one minor item. They do not expect to have anything ready even for a fall time frame. We don't necessarily have any budget issues to deal with now, so I don't have anything on that front. Whether or not we will have anything to deal with in the fall, it's a little too early to tell. So I can't say we would have something in the summer and that would replace the fall. But I'm also not saying we necessarily have anything to have a fall town meeting.
And what does the charter dictate as far as time frame, lead time to announce?
It's 7 days for a special town meeting, but 7 days turns into about 30 days
Right,
when you follow the full process.
Right.
But I guess what I would suggest, because I don't have a date, but at next week's meeting we would present you with a date for the special town meeting. We are still in the process of working. Town council is working with the developer, so we don't have a draft yet of the power purchase agreement, but he told me yesterday he thought he would have something by the end of this week.
Okay. So we have a motion that's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll work out the details and talk about it next week.
Good.
All right, let's go down to the meat of the rest of our meeting is the appointment process for town committees and boards. I'm going to ask the town manager to walk us through.
So first, I will present you with the Board of Selectmen appointments for fiscal 2017. My preference would be just to read them in its entirety, and if we can take any questions up at the end, if there isn't any issue with that. There are requests for reappointment forms for almost everybody who was on this list. I think the only exception were with the 2 selectmen that serve as selectmen's representatives to the Cable Advisory Committee. So for the Agricultural Commission, a 3-year term to expire June 30, 2019, Maureen Dupuy. For the Cable Advisory Committee, for a 1-year term to expire June 30, 2017, not 16. Steve Walker, representing PAC. Tom Alonso representing Board of Selectmen, Paula Bertram representing Board of Selectmen. For the Conservation Commission, 2 3-year terms to expire 2019, Todd Dwyer and Jack Rabbit. I will mention that there is an associate member of the Conservation Commission, a 1-year term that is vacant. Clock Winders, with 1-year terms to expire June 30, 2017, Lou Franco, Michael Kidney, Joseph Dettenrider, George Martin, and Tom Alonso. Constables, 2 people for a 1-year term each, term to expire June 30, 2017, Stanley Young and Kevin Rice. For the Council on Aging, 3-year terms to expire June 30, 2019, Pete Lincoln, Judy Tarbell, Jacqueline Dwyer, Kevin McNally, and Jane Rabbit. The Historical Commission, 1 3-year term to expire June 30, 2019, Lois Lewis. To the MART Advisory Board, a 1-year term to expire June 30, 2017, Phyllis Luck, representing the Board of Selectmen. The Montechusett Regional Technical Vocational School Committee, a 3-year term expiring June 30, 2019, Barbara Reynolds. The Personnel Committee, that is an error that should not be included. On the second page, the Senior Citizen Property Taxation Work-Off Committee, these are 1-year terms to expire June 30, 2017, and also these are employees representing departments as required by the bylaw, so you won't necessarily have requests for reappointments. Mylene Malari, representing the Treasurer Collector's Office, Nancy Forrest, representing Human Resources, Sue Doherty, representing the Council on Aging, and Sheila Cragen, representing the Assessor's Office. Town Council for a 1-year term to expire June 30, 2017, Kopelman and Page, PC. And the Zoning Board of Appeals, a 5-year term to expire June 30, 2021, James Bierzarski.
I would make a motion that we appoint the parties as read by the town manager.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
The second set of appointments before you this evening are town manager appointments. Most of these individuals are current employees, and they don't necessarily fill out the request for reappointment forms. I can tell you I didn't, and I will gladly give up any of these appointments if you'd like to hold that against me. So,
No such luck.
You would give up hazardous waste coordinator?
in a heartbeat. So these are all 1-year appointments to expire June 30, 2017. Assistant Building Inspector John Moriali, Alternate Building Inspector Ed Cataldo, Dam Keeper Ronald Wilson, Assistant Dam Keeper Richard Patry, Emergency Management Director / Forest Warden, Fire Chief Patrick Sullivan. I would mention that we have vacancies for fence viewers. If anybody is interested in that position, please fill out a talent bank form and return it to the Selectman's office. Field Driver Kathleen Como, Hazardous Waste Coordinator Carrie LaFleur, Hearings Officer Carrie LaFleur, Inspector of Plumbing and Gas Gary Williams, Assistant Inspector of Plumbing and Gas Richard Capanis, Pound Keeper Jean Larkin, Inspector of Weights and Measures Stephen Cullinane, Inspector of Wires James Sharkey, Assistant Wiring Inspector Jack Beery, Races Control Officer Ralph Swick, Brian LeBlanc, and Janine Swick, Tree Warden Jack Rodriquins, Veterans Service Officer T.J. Blauser, and then as police officers, reserve police officers, and licensing commission agents. These are from the Lunenburg Police Department: Chief James Marino, Lieutenant Mike Luth, Sergeant Tom Gamble, Sergeant Sean Connery, Sergeant Jack Hebert, Detective Sergeant Jeff Thibodeau, Officer John Brock, Officer Bob DeConza, Officer Pete Licoditis, Officer Joshua Matthew, Officer Bradley McNamara, Officer Devin O'Brien, Officer Josh Tossi, Officer Sean Zrate. Those are our full-time officers. Our reserves: Officer Stan Barney, Officer Benjamin Campbell, Officer Robert DaCosta, Officer Jacob LaChance, Officer Megan Landry, Officer Donald Latart, Officer Zachary Lavassier, Officer Todd Lynch, Officer Jonathan May, Officer Lisa Melnicki, Officer John Moriali Jr., Officer Chad Statler, Officer John Wagner, and then as reserve officers from the Shirley Police Department, Sergeant Peter Violet, Sergeant Alfreda Cromwell, Sergeant Samuel Santiago, Patrol Officer Craig Laprade, Patrol Officer Everett Moody Jr., Patrol Officer Matthew Giuliano, Patrol Officer William McGinnis, Patrol Officer Joseph Barker Santiago, Reserve Officer Alan Rice, Reserve Officer Ian Brown, Reserve Officer Mark Lafferty, Reserve Officer David Lang, Reserve Officer Matthew O'Sullivan, Reserve Officer Ryan Stranise, and from the Townsend Police Department, full-time officers, Chief Robert Eaton Jr., Lieutenant Mark Giancotti, Sergeant John Johnson, Sergeant Kimberly Matson, Sergeant Randy Gerard, Officer James Marchand, Officer Thaddeus Rochette, Officer George Reedy, Officer Mark Francis, Officer David Phillips, Officer James Landy, Officer Brent Davis, Officer Jeffrey Giles, Officer Michael Marchand, Reserve Officers Tony Brennan, Chris Van Voorhees, Austin Cody, Joseph Quinn, and Thomas Khalil.
I'd make a motion to ratify all the town manager appointments as read.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Could you explain what RACES, R-A-C-E-S, control officer means?
I'm going to, so this is operation of the emergency radio system in the event of an emergency. I think there might be some additional information on the...
Also interested why in Shirley the chief did not put himself on the list of special police officers.
Well, one question at a time, people.
Wow.
So RACES, Radio Amateur Civilian Emergency Services, is a standby radio service provided for in Part 97 of the FCC Rules and Regulations. The RACES program is administered by local emergency management agencies to engaged licensed amateur radio operators who have registered in the program. The program is activated only by the town emergency manager. And I don't have the answer to the second question.
That's why I didn't worry about throwing too many questions at you. I'm sure you didn't.
And the third final question is, we appoint Townsend and Shirley, but we don't do Leominster or Fitchburg. Is there a separate agreement, mutual aid agreement regarding police officers?
Well, we don't do Ashby either.
Right, Ashby touches.
You know, I should know the answer to this. I honestly don't.
Okay.
I would have to get back to you on that.
If we go back to the chairman's narrative, these are the things she needs to further research. Questions are brought up.
That's right.
No, I feel like that's been asked before, and it's because of an IMA, but I don't know 100%. So
Yeah, the Ashby would be the one that's the only one that's a town. The other two are cities.
Right.
Yeah, I mean these are people that we would call on a regular basis to provide support service to the Lunenburg Police Department. They also are people who may be doing detail work within the community.
Okay.
So I don't believe we took a vote on that, did we?
No.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So,
And please thank Elaine for all the work that she did to coordinate the work. It's greatly appreciated.
please do.
Agreed, yes.
another, just a note, I don't know if any of you spent a lot of time in the reappointments, but there was a couple of comments from Council on the Aging that invited selectmen to occasionally attend their meetings and get to know what they're doing, and I'm personally going to follow up on that. I invite you to do the same.
Great.
Okay. We have no minutes, warrants. Accounts payable in the amount of $347,080.85.
This is the middle school, high school project.
The middle school, high school project, $1,117,316.51.
This is payroll.
And payroll in the amount of $742,405.04.
And payroll deduction.
And payroll deductions in the amount of $23,339.99. That it on that?
That's it.
Okay. Action file issues. I have one. There's been an awful lot of input to myself and to the town, various town departments, town manager, et cetera, around flag policy and procedure, both in light of the Memorial Day activities, half-staff in terms of the recognition of the tragedy in Orlando, in terms of today being Flag Day, et cetera. And we have some situations where the who mans them, who raises them, who layers them, who lowers them, whether they're illuminated at night, whether trees interfere with them, et cetera. I would like to recommend that we work on a flag policy and procedure to be part of our, policies and procedures.
I think most of that is probably mandated by law, but
Right.
yeah, we should make sure it's
But I
followed
think
through.
we should take that to the town level and say, when do we
Yep.
do whatever we do? So I'd like
Run
to-
it up the flagpole and discuss it.
As long as the tree's not in the way.
That's right.
Any other action file issues?
The other thing would be working on a schedule for workshops on a regular basis going forward.
Right. And I think we've agreed that we want to have one that almost exclusively concentrates on our goal-setting process for next year as soon as we get the five of us back together again. Okay, and I'd like to recommend that be pretty much the whole meeting that night, so that it's not at the tail end of another meeting. Okay, great. Committee reports. Mr. Alonso?
No report on the Finance Committee. I have not attended one recently. Cable Advisory will meet, as I've said, prior meetings, and there's a lot of vacations, so we're meeting the end of July. And the School Building Committee met at the new school on last Wednesday at the middle school collaborative space, which was excellent. And so obviously we have the certificate of occupancy, which was known. Now the project goes to the asbestos abatement, starting in sections. So they're going to do the gym first, and then they will tear down the gym. That will give them the room they need to put some of the final buildings. I think one of them is the maintenance garage. And then they will go section by section. I think the building was built in 3 separate sections, so they have different constructions, which require different demolitions. So that's why they're doing it in that order. We did have one, we authorized some change orders in the amount of $31,842, which had to do with supplemental heating units in one of the open spaces where the space was cathedral ceiling, and it was thought that it was deemed that it would not stay warm enough without the supplemental heaters, so that was for the amount of $15,834. The athletic department in the weight room wanted eventually to be able to put a digital screen for teaching a large class because the room is so big, so we didn't authorize the screen, but just the electrical work and the outlet up high, so we can put an arm and a screen up high. We had to relocate 2 convectors in the locker rooms because they stuck out just enough to minimize the ADA requirements for pass-through, so they were moved. That was in the amount of $3,680. There was a floor finish change in the control booth and electrical rooms in the auditorium. They were changed from carpet to a flooring called VCT to reduce the potential static buildup. That was $1,401. And then we modified the boulder. We're going to create a boulder wall where the concession stand is. They had originally been planned for a chain link fence, so people wouldn't go over there, but we decided to regrade it, and it would give more viewpoints, vantage point, and it wouldn't be a maintenance problem with trash being caught in the fence where it was. So that was $10,039. There are a few other things that are possible on the change requests. It is not known whether they will go forward or not. They amount to $95,000 that are potential. Some of them will go, some of them probably will not. But right now, we are just shy of $4 million left in the contingency. So unless they hit, I asked them specifically what could happen on the demolition of the building, and they said really the only thing that would be soil conditions, or if they run into a utility that nobody knew ran there. Aside from those, it's pretty straightforward process. And that process of doing the demolition, the abatement and the demolition is probably going to take 6 to 8 weeks.
No reports.
And I have no reports. We have anything from the town manager?
Sure, but I will be brief. For anybody who is interested in the circuit upgrades to Unitil, I did receive some information from Unitil today. They originally said that they would be working to complete the circuit upgrade on the 2 circuits in Lunenburg that are affected, that they would have that done by the end of the calendar year. They're now saying probably the end of the fall, so a little bit in advance of what their original timetable was. And for anybody who is on the waiting list to have a solar project approved, either at your residence or commercial property, you should be receiving some information from Unitil directly within the next couple of weeks about the project. So that is good news. The Nexamp proposal or project, I received contact this week from Nexamp. They would like to request that the board consider a slight amendment to the project timetable for the substantial completion date and the commercial operation date, still within this calendar year, but the current dates are mid-July and I believe mid-October. The project is in Fitchburg, and because of the change in the mayor and city council in Fitchburg, or city solicitor in Fitchburg, the process to negotiate a pilot agreement was a little bit more lengthy than what they had anticipated. They have successfully negotiated a pilot agreement, and they're moving the project forward, but they're concerned that they're not going to meet the 2 dates that are established in the contract, and so they will be putting forth a request for an amendment to the contract, just moving those dates out slightly. So I'm waiting to receive that amendment, but I think it will be on next week's agenda. We have auditors in this week doing pre-audit work for fiscal 16, and that is going well. We are moving forward with Verizon Wireless on the lease for the cell tower that will be located on school property. That project also has to go through a special permit process, so if anybody is interested, that will be a special permit process through the planning board. That project is tied to the replacement of the track and the turf. We are in the process of compiling the bid documents for that replacement so that we can move forward. Our hope is that we'll be able to get that work done over the summer and prior to school opening for next school year. One last item, we did take bids for our purchase of asphalt. We have a 3-year contract. We bid that out once every 3 years. We took bids last week. We had 4 bids. The low bidder was PJ Keating. That's who we currently contract with, and the price per ton for asphalt is actually lower than the current contract. I'm not going to go through all of the bids because we bid about 20 different items, but that file is available if anybody is interested in reviewing that. And so that's great, because that contract, I did have to confirm this, that contract is written so we can go up to 25% over in quantities without having to go back and renegotiate. But with mutual agreement, we can go more than 25%. And so we're still trying to figure out how we're going to move forward with the pavement of the local roads. Right now, we're doing our spring paving project. Next, we'll be doing paving of the roads in the sewer betterment district. And while we're doing those projects, we're putting together a proposal that we're going to bring back to you to talk about how we're going to move forward with Phase 1 of the local roads. Those are all my items.
Alrighty. We next meet on the 21st of June. I believe Mrs. Luck will be returning and Mr. Alonso will be leaving. Is there any final comment from the board?
Just following up on the bidding on the pavement and the pavement management plan, I want to thank the DPW and the work that they've done overseeing the Lancaster Ave, Leominster Road repaving. They've communicated well with the public. The work adding the Cape Cod berm to the side looks like that's going to be helping to maintain the roads on a going forward basis, and all the little details they've done with everybody's driveways and the other work like that, as well as the dirt behind it. It shows quality work, and if we can do that with all our roads, that'll help the process.
I will say, only because I won't be here next week, so even though it sounds really premature, I wish everybody a very happy Independence Day and to be safe. Enjoy the holiday, but don't be crazy.
Okay. There is no public here, so I won't ask for comments from the public. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.